Hello. Hello. What happens when life goes to poo poo? What happens when a major event, when a transition not of our choosing is foisted upon us? Hi, I'm Jeffrey. Welcome to another episode of the Jeffrey Marsh podcast. One thing that I do exceedingly well is offer comfort and kindness to people. And if you have felt, if you have experienced, if you have seen, if you have been through a huge, unchosen life event that you might call a horror, a tragedy, a difficulty, recently, this episode's for you. I want to talk about what happens to us, what we do, what we can do, what we might do to care for ourselves when something deeply disturbing happens. So it must be said that at the time of this recording and at the time that this episode will go up and be published, the world is having lots of hatred, lots of difficulty, lots of division, lots of stress. I wish I could say it was recent, but it's been eight to 10 years of very difficult times for everyone. And still, humanity is playing the hits of being just incredibly difficult and hateful and mean and cruel to each other, as we have for all of our history. But in that context, I want to talk about the personal. What do you do if a loved one dies? What do you do when you lose that job you loved? What do you do if you lose that job that you didn't exactly love, but that brought you a sense of purpose and brought you a sense of place and a sense of identity? What do you do when there's a breakup? What do you do when an internet mob comes after you? What do you do when your career is upended? What do you do to take care of yourself in times of great change? Let's talk about it together. But first, why did I make this podcast? I wanted you to... You might have noticed this week's episode is going to be a little bit different than others. Something's not like the others, and it's this podcast. We won't be following the general format or the usual format, and there's a reason for that. Sometimes life calls you to go off script. Sometimes life calls you to go in a different direction. And I made this podcast and continue to make this podcast to try to be of service, to try to be of kindness in the world, and to try to help as best as I can and be vulnerable and pour my heart out and help you feel less alone. I couldn't find a podcast that hit that mark for me. I would listen and listen and listen, and there are plenty of spiritual podcasts, there are plenty of self-help podcasts, there are plenty of podcasts that foster a sense of community, but there were few podcasts that I could find where I felt like I hated myself less afterward. There were few podcasts I could find where I felt like I had grown, but not through the self-hate model of growing. Not through the self-hate model of learning. A comforting, kind, safe podcast where you could actually do the work of having a better life, actually do the work of loving yourself a bit more, actually do the work of hating yourself a bit less. And this is that safe home. And I've told this story a couple times, but I think one of the greatest compliments I ever received happened a while ago. Someone told me, "You are a very positive person. You're a light, you're an angel, and you don't pretend like the darkness isn't there." to me, it's both. To me, it's yes and. It's like the spiritual model of the yin and the yang, right? It is that all of it is here. Even, the masculine and the feminine, right? All of it is contained in all of us, the light and the dark. And certainly life has plenty of light and life has plenty of dark. I think people can... Is it okay to get real with you for a second? I think people can tell from looking at me what I was bullied for. People can tell from looking at me that I've had a lot of pain, tragedy, difficulty, rejection. I'm trying to think of the other things that have happened to me. That I've had a lot of pain in my life, and I keep smiling. And I choose the light. And if you're finding me without the visual format, if you're not watching the video on YouTube, I'm YouTube. I am gender nonconforming. I am not YouTube. I'm gender nonconforming. I'm non-binary. I am very, very, you might say, visibly LGBTQ. And I have chosen the path in my life to be authentic to that, to be clear about that. And that has brought a lot of rejection, pain, harassment, difficulty in my life, in addition to the normal things like the tragedies I've had personally of losing a friend, the tragedies I've had personally of having my life upended. I've been close to homelessness at times in my life. And I've had the triumphs. My beautiful partner, my husband, is a beacon of light in my life. And I've certainly done many things in my career that I'm very proud of. Sometimes in life, you simply survive. And that's basically what I wanted to talk to you about and tell you about today. Sometimes in life, you choose not to quote-unquote improve, not to hold yourself to a standard of self-care, whatever that may mean to you, and you simply cling on and live and breathe, and you don't even find meaning in life. Sometimes we don't even have the capacity to do self-care. We don't even have the capacity to craft our life so that we feel fulfilled. And all the things you may have heard throughout your life about what it means to take care of yourself. Sometimes taking care of yourself is just simply the next breath, the next breath, the next breath, the next breath. And I wanted to tell you that that's deeply okay. I'm going to tell you a story that I have told once or twice, and I've never told all the way through, but I'm going to do that today. I was giving a speech in a conservative part of the country, and it was fine. It was okay to be there, but it was a hostile place, hostile geographically to people like me, in general, not to stereotype folks who lived there, but I was there to give a speech at a religious Christian college, and the speech was about spirituality and how to heal, how to love yourself, things that, by the way, Christ talked about, right? Jesus talked about. I'm not Christian, but from what I understand, Jesus talked like that, and I was raised Christian, by the way. So it was actually, that's pertinent because it was kind of a homecoming. I was being welcomed into this environment where I was going to give this speech about telling my story a bit and talking to the folks, local folks, and also students that were college students on campus. And the speech was a great success, and it felt wonderful, and it was heart-opening. And the Uber took me back to my hotel, which was semi-local, but was in a rural part of, the campus was in sort of like the towny part, and then outside the town, in the rural part, was this hotel. And there was this big, huge parking lot in front of the hotel, many more spaces for cars than they had rooms in the hotel. And the Uber driver dropped me off on the far side of the parking lot. And for the speech, I was in a sparkling, glittery, it was sequins, actually. I want to say gown, but it wasn't exactly a gown. It was cut above the knee, and it was figure flattering, if I may say. And it was way sparkly and glittery. And I get out of the Uber and I start to walk across the parking lot to get to the front of the hotel. And this car, it was a pickup truck actually, which was black pickup truck. I could hear it behind me. So I get about halfway, 2/3 through the parking lot toward the hotel. And there's, you know what tires sound like on an asphalt parking lot. And I could hear it behind me going very slow and just pulling out and going very slow. And it was two gentlemen in the pickup truck, and one of them rolled down the window or electrically opened the window, I can't remember, and leaned out and started saying things to me. Why are you in a dress? Are you gay? What's going on with you? Right? Harassing things out the window. And I started in my mind to tell myself kind things. I was walking, and I started to walk a little faster in my heels, clickety-clackety, on the asphalt. And this guy's yelling and yelling and yelling. And in my mind, I'm walking fast and I'm saying, I love you, Jeffrey. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. I'm with you. No matter what happens, we'll be together. It's okay. I love you. I'm with you. And I eventually was safe. I ended up going so fast that I was kind of basically running in heels, and ran into the hotel and ran to my room, bolted the door. And this is the part of the story that I don't tell. I just had a complete breakdown crying. Just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And it is part of the life of being a visibly LGBTQ person to get street harassment. This was parking lot harassment. It's just part of our lives to get things yelled at you and stuff like that, and to be in threatening situations is part of being us. But this was not necessarily as tragic as some deeply tragic things that can happen to human beings. But it was a deeply painful experience that sent me into a kind of depression at the time. And I say kind of because I'm a spiritual warrior and I study Zen Buddhism and have dealt with depression throughout my life. And I recognize that, maybe I'll do a whole nother episode on that, but depression can be in a reason to connect with oneself. And in that way, I consider it to be an invitation towards spiritual connection when it occurs to me. I feel deeply that you deserve to just survive sometimes. To let go, to sob, to release the tears, if that's where you are, if that's what you need. I know deep down that you don't deserve when things happen to you that are hard. I know deep down that what you do deserve is comfort, kindness, and plenty of space. So I wish that I could give you Jeffrey's list. That's me, Jeffrey, if you're new around here. Jeffrey's list of your top tips of what to do when tragedy strikes, when a personal, awful event happens and you feel chaotic and awful and unsafe in the world. But there are no tips. And to put tips on it, to me, almost diminishes how powerful it is to be struck like that by a life event. So I guess there's only one hot tip. And that hot tip is, gosh, it's okay to just survive. Watch the Netflix at 3 a.m. Talk to friends. Stay on the couch. Do whatever you need to do. Hug a stuffed animal. There just aren't any rules, especially right in the aftermath of something that is really difficult and extremely tilting you toward feeling unsafe, feeling lonely, feeling isolated, feeling disconnected from the universe, life, spiritual energy, yourself. And that kind of separation is something, well, I didn't think I would say this, but here it comes out of my mouth. The reason I studied Buddhism and have for 25 years is because I was in an extremely dark place. I had life events, and maybe I'll talk more about them. I am pretty open about my life events, but, maybe I'll get deeper, and in my books, right? But maybe I'll talk about them more here on the podcast. But I was in a deeply dark, tragic, self-hating place when I entered Buddhist practice and when I entered the monastery. And my teacher at the monastery used to say people come to Buddhism when they have suffered enough. And I certainly was there. Boy, was I there. I basically had taken all the hate I had received my entire life from parents, but also from people at school, people at church. I've just been goodness. I've been inspiring people to have reactions my entire life. And also I've had, the normal human tragic things happen, that happen in a person's lifetime throughout my life. And it is fascinating to me because, my bugaboo is self-hate and helping people get rid of self-hate. It is fascinating to me that quite often, no matter how depleted we are, emotionally, physically, spiritually, no matter how rock bottom a person can get, the self-hating voices inside still have energy and juice. And you could be at absolute rock bottom and there would be a voice in your head saying, this is your fault, If you hadn't done this or that or the other, you would have never done that. Or a voice in your head saying, what are you going to do tomorrow? How are you going to survive this? Or a voice saying, don't you miss him? Oh my gosh, this is such a tragedy, right? The point of what I'm saying is, even when we are at our lowest, it is evil, awful, and gross that we all have this self-hating mechanism inside of us that still kicks in to tell us things that we would never tell an outside person, to say things to us that we would never say to another human being, especially one who is in a vulnerable, difficult, tragic space. Generally, in the other episodes, I take pauses. to let you breathe, but I don't want you to be alone for this one or during this one. What I want is for you to feel connected, even just for a moment. So if you're willing, take some breaths with me. Let's exhale. You don't have to feel any certain thing. Just feel whatever. Inhale. Exhale. Great. Twice more. Inhale. Exhale. Do that again. Inhale. And exhale. Before we close today, I'd like to tell you some beautiful, kind, encouraging things. It's okay. You will be okay. I don't know that as a guarantee. And I don't mean to say that like, you better be okay as soon as possible. That's not what I'm saying at all. I know that what you're going through is close to things you have gone through before. And I know that you know how to find your way toward peace, toward kindness, toward love. And if you're going to point yourself, again, you don't have to do anything. But if you're going to point yourself in any direction, point yourself toward that. And when I say love, I mean self-kindness. I mean self-compassion. Let yourself off the hook. You don't got to accomplish anything. You don't got to do anything you don't want to do. You don't got to do anything other people want you to do. You don't got to do anything. You don't got to do anything. Give yourself space. And one of the things as a final encouragement today, pain is okay. I think when very tragic things happen to us, we tend to want to, very naturally, because we're, animals, right? We want to avoid the pain, even if it's an emotional pain. And, you don't have to feel pain 24/7, and you can have moments of lightness and laughter, and you can have moments where you're not in pain, right? You don't have to feel guilty about those things. But you don't have to avoid your pain either. It's okay for that to be a part of your life and a part of your experience for a very long time. And it's okay for you to be a full, complicated, big human experience that has a lot of light, a lot of dark, a lot of in between, a lot of stuff happening. I care about you. And my heart is with you. Take very good care today.